spreading the news.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.
Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win at the buzzer! Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. LeBron James with the rejection. Puts up the three. Won't go. Rebound box. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron, and we are brought to you by Ice Shaker, your go-to ice shaker that you need in your life. Cold drinks, hot drinks. Use promo code Off the Ball to get $10 off your first purchase when you go to iceshaker.com. But we got a good one today. I got a guy that I've been on his pod before talking college basketball. He's the busy man, so I'm happy to have him on the pod. My guy Steven, host of the Burr Rise podcast and a credentialed college basketball media member now. You know, we on the timeline, you see him, he's all over the place. You know, so Steve, my man, welcome to the pod.
Chris, it is always a pleasure. You've been on Bird Rights and you've been on One and Done, both my podcasts a couple of times now. Though I think this is my first time on yours, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Round of applause. Welcome
we
to
go.
the pod.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. I'm excited to have you on. So there's a lot going on in the association. You know, we're gonna talk about the ups and downs of the 76er season. Talk about we believe in the New York Knicks. So let's get right into it. Obviously, there's a lot. The trade deadline is days away, Steve, and there's a lot of rumors. And obviously, we heard yesterday Jimmy, got suspended again for the third time. First time got suspended for 7 games, then got suspended for 2 games. And now suspended indefinitely, walked out of a practice after finding out that he's not going to be starting no more. So what's your thoughts on the whole Jimmy saga? Because obviously it's been brewing all season long, and it's, Pat Riley came out and said, we're not trading him not too long ago. And I think a lot of people were like, well, I don't believe you. And now it's suspended 3 times since that incident. And now it's looking like he's definitely going to be traded. Or at worst, this is the last time we've seen him in a Miami Heat uniform. So what's your thoughts on the whole Jimmy stuff, and what do you think is the solution to this?
So when I was doing my Bird Rights season previews for a whole bunch of NBA teams, we finished recording one episode, and my guest said there's rumblings that Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami. And at the time, this was not a known thing by any means. Mm-hmm. It didn't really shock me given the nature of Jimmy Butler, but I preface that to say this has probably been brewing longer than what's been out there. That since this offseason, he's been wanting an extension, and Miami has been unwilling to give it to him. So with that said, as a Sixers fan growing up, I've experienced, the Jimmy Butler sag, but honestly, we got the good version of Jimmy Butler because we got him on an expiring deal when he thought there was a possibility Philly could pay him at the end of that year. So we got good behavior, Jimmy Butler. We didn't get the Jimmy Butler waving Valley towels for the Warriors on the T-Wolves bench. We didn't get disgruntled Jimmy Butler. So it's tough for me to say, really. I went through with Ben Simmons, definitely, as a Sixers fan. So I know what it's like to have a disgruntled, star that wants out. But, he has to get traded, right? At this point, people are talking about, maybe Miami holds out and then he'll threaten to pick up his player option, or maybe he will pick up his Miami doesn't want to deal with that. You know how the Heat are. They never really bottom out. They never have bottomed out in my lifetime, and I'm 30 years old. Yeah, they've never really, at least if they weren't that great, that's one. But I've never seen the Miami Heat just tank. They've never have.
They haven't had a consistent bad year. I think they had like a bad year when they got Beasley, but like other than that, they haven't really been consistently bad like some other teams. You know, as our teams have have done in our lifetimes. You know.
So I preface that to say, yes, I know they do want some financial flexibility going into this offseason and even the following offseason. The one team that has stuck out, and again, I host a Bird Rights pod. I'm a self-proclaimed NBA front office, CBA salary cap guy. So I could talk trades all day. But I preface that maybe Golden State. I know Phoenix has been the one that everyone's talking about, but even from the beginning, I said, who the heck is going to want Bradley Beal's?
That's the thing, right?
And Bradley Beal would have to pick them as well. So people saying, oh, Chicago, because that makes some sense because they have Zach LaVine's bad contract. So it's not as bad as Bradley Beal. So maybe those are 3-team trade to be worked out there. But like people were talking about Bradley Beal to Milwaukee and Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis to Miami and Pat Connaughton to Toronto and like the super expanded 4-5 team deal. Milwaukee, no, they're not going to take Bradley Beal. And I think that was actually reported that they don't want Bradley Beal. So at this point, I don't see a way that he's going to end up in Phoenix, even though he knows Matt Ishbia would pay him. So, I mean, and he came out and said, I will play for any team except for Miami and Memphis. That indicates to me that Memphis inquired and said, okay, we are willing to trade for you, even if, we're taking the shot on you not resigning here. They were willing to take him as a rental.
Which is kind of wild because Memphis is like tied for the second seed right now. And they could use a Jimmy Butler, especially in the playoffs. They could use a player like him to get over to get to that next step, which.
I mean, the only team that really makes sense to me is the Golden State Warriors, where you could package Andrew Wiggins, you could package Jonathan Kuminga, but then like Miami, are they going to want to pay Kuminga the $30 million? We know that's what he wants. That's why he decided to rookie extension.
Worry about extending him now next.
Yeah, so it's like that doesn't give them the cap flexibility they're looking for, unless something. Again, I'm going to plug my mock trade deadline here. We actually accomplished a 3-team deal where Jimmy went to Golden State,
right?
Wiggins went to Toronto. So they then like Bruce Brown's expiring, went to Miami. So a deal similar to that. I think Kelly Olynyk and Dennis Schroeder were involved in there somewhere. And he still did get Kuminga. So at least if they had to pay Kuminga, they also didn't have Wiggins' contract on the books. I mean, maybe that's a 3-teamer we could see. My one dark horse I will say for Jimmy Butler. What do you think about the Cleveland Cavaliers? I mentioned it to people, and people don't love it. But I could see, before this 4-game losing streak, they were on pace to win 70 games. And, like, if they could convince themselves that Jimmy will be, like, a secondary or tertiary, like, ball handler behind Garland and Mitchell, like, he's the wing defender.
What's the trade?
So, Max Strus, Isaac Okoro, and who's the other mid-tier guy? I could pull up the cap sheet real quick. I have it right here. Max Strus, Isaac Okoro, and Karis LeVert, who's an expiring. That gives Miami a little bit of cap flexibility. They already, they have familiarity with Max Strus, obviously. They're not taking any bad money. And again, Miami doesn't want to bottom out. They'll take 2 or 3 role players for Jimmy, potentially. Maybe Cleveland throws in, I don't know, a couple seconds or something. I don't know Cleveland's draft equity offhand. But I don't know. It's something I've dabbled with. There's always a dark horse in these conversations. And for Jimmy, I think it was Memphis until he's trying to now push his way away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Cleveland is the dark horse here.
Cleveland's interesting because they could.
I don't know where else he goes if it's not Golden State. I don't think it's Milwaukee. Phoenix would have to get up Bradley Beal. I don't think anyone's taking. I mean, what's another, aside from Golden State, a feasible option for Jimmy Butler right now? If not Memphis.
Because you're starting to hear Golden State stuff. Cleveland's interesting. That's interesting. Because, especially during their losing streak, they've really struggled on the perimeter defensively.
Yeah.
And I know Jimmy's not the same defensive menace he was when he was younger, but still, that would be a bonus for them because they can use that. But it would be a small, I mean, but you still, I mean, you got.
Let me ask you. You're a Knicks guy, obviously. Anyone who listens to this pod know you're a Knicks guy. Knicks, I think we could say, safely say the Knicks have the best starting 1 through 5 in the NBA. More or less.
Yeah.
If Cleveland had Jimmy Butler, who has the better starting 5? Jimmy, Garland, Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. I think that's better than what the Knicks have. And I think the Knicks starting lineup is phenomenal.
It's definitely compatible. It's definitely up there. And Jimmy he's taken us down in the playoffs before. And that could be what Cleveland could need to get over the top, too. So, no, that's it. I haven't thought about Cleveland in this Jimmy stuff, but especially with this little funk they've had.
Yeah,
like you said, they're struggling on the perimeter. They don't have that third guy that can help them, and Jimmy would be ideal.
They would still have Dean Wade in this scenario, who's been phenomenal for them. I know he got hurt a couple of days ago, but he'd be the first guy off the bench. You still have Ty Jerome, George Niang. They could probably flip for a big man to really solidify. If they could get Jimmy Butler and Larry Nance Jr. or something like that at the deadline, this Cleveland team is phenomenal. And when you're on pace to win 70 games this late in the year before that losing streak, you go for it. You're too close not to.
No, I'm with you. Especially Cleveland. If they're close. Mobley has gotten significantly better, especially offensively. Jared Allen has been rock solid. Garland is playing up to playing like his all-star season.
Yep.
Hey, you might have to go all in.
But the counter argument to that is, okay, do you really want to ruffle these feathers, bring in a possible disgruntled star who knows he may not get paid from you when you have all these guys maximizing? Does Jimmy Butler maximize what these guys have been doing? That's a question that Kobe Altman and that front office is going to have to ask themselves. And
do you extend him? Because he wants an extension.
When you're as good as Cleveland is, just worry about it later. If he picks up a player option, he does. If not, then you worry about it then.
I think Cleveland has you got Boston, New York, Cleveland. That's probably the cream of the crop in the East.
Agreed.
You kind of have to figure out, okay, how do we capitalize on this, whatever we got right now? Because in the NBA, Steve, more than ever, it's a win now league. It's no more, we're going to wait we got 4 or 5 years to build this out. It's no, we got 2 years, 2-3 years, and we need to figure this thing out right now. So do they make that's a power move.
Yep.
And I remember a few years ago, when they got Donovan Mitchell, I was like, Cleveland has the assets and the pieces to make a power move. And they made that power move. Now, do they strike again with another big time move and have their, and have a formal starting lineup that goes up with Boston and New York?
Yep.
Because that's what it looks like you need. You need that formidable. That's what the Knicks did. The Knicks saw Boston and said, we need a starting 5 that matches up with Boston. Because it doesn't matter the depth. We need the starting lineup that can go toe-to-toe with Boston, or else we're just going to be a second round, third round team, and we can't compete with Boston. Yep. And if you're Cleveland, are you having that same mindset? Hey, yeah, we had a great start to the season, but right now, hey, we may not be with Boston and New York. They got elite starting 5s. We added Jimmy Butler. Is that what helps us potentially get to that hump?
And Cleveland wants to make sure they keep that 1 seed, because then you have the Knicks and Boston beating each other up in the 2-3 matchup while they'll go against the Milwaukees or the Orlandos to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. They're in position.
Yeah. No, Cleveland is interesting. That is definitely a team that I wasn't thinking about, and now it has me thinking that there is a team lurking. Because, like I said, there's not a lot of teams. There's not a lot of teams that are really going to be in it, to get Jimmy Butler. So you're like I said, he wants to go to Phoenix, but that's very tricky. That I don't know how that even works.
I wish there was a team I could say, okay, this makes sense for this team to take Bradley Beal.
That's the thing.
I don't say it. I mean, Milwaukee is not going to take Bradley Beal.
No.
I don't know.
That's the thing. Right?
Chicago's the only one that makes some sense because they have Zach LaVine's contract, but Zach LaVine's contract I still feel is way better than Bradley Beal's contract.
Yeah.
That's how bad the Brad Beal, and I love Brad Beal as a guy and as a player, but that's just the reality of the situation. And would he even waive his no trade clause to go to Chicago? Probably not.
No, not Chicago. I don't think so. So yeah, I mean his dreams of wanting to go play with. I mean, listen, Jimmy has shown that he definitely wants to be in Phoenix with the hair stuff with the braids and the shoes. So
like, what about Denver? Would Beal? I know it's been reported that Beal would waive his no trade clause for Denver, but I don't think the Nuggets would want that deal.
How many years left does Beal have on his contract? 2?
He has 2 more after this year.
So he has 2 after this year.
I don't think Denver would want it.
I don't think Denver would want it. I mean, Michael Porter's on a max, and you got.
Porter would probably have to go out. So that's
Porter.
What I'm saying. Yeah.
Do you do that? Does that make you better if you get rid of Porter and flip Beal?
I don't think so.
And you have I don't know Russell Westbrook, Jamal Murray, Bradley Beal trio.
No matter what the Bradley Beal deal or Jimmy Butler, if there's a deal involving Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal, it's going to be at least 4 or 5 teams. There's no way.
It's going to be a massive trade.
What about the only other spot I could think of that would potentially take Brad Beal? I want to say the Los Angeles Clippers, only because Steve Ballmer is so much richer than every other owner in the NBA that he could give, pardon my French, 2 shits about, paying him. Like, he has so much money. But at the same time, he didn't want to pay Paul George this offseason. Yeah. So, like, he's not that. It's just going back to logic. But sometimes logic precedes stuff like this. Like, we see NBA front offices make moves that we may not agree with, that we don't foresee. Mm-hmm. So, like, maybe there's a team out. I don't know. A team that would make sense that Brad Beal would waive his no trade clause for, that would also take Brad Beal. So, again, there's just no way that Jimmy gets to Phoenix. I just don't see it.
I'm sure they're trying. I'm sure they're trying, but it's going to be interesting because it's not an ideal. It's not an ideal situation. But I definitely don't see Jimmy Butler. He will not be wearing a Miami Heat jersey again. So regardless if it's traded or not, or they just say, stay home. We can figure a trade. We couldn't get you to Phoenix. Just stay home, man. Just stay home. We'll just inactivate you. You're just going to be on the inactive list, and that's it. I can get Jimmy's beef, though. I understand where he's coming from. I could see him being like, 2019 free agency. You guys missed up on all the top free agents in 2019. I come there, and I go farther than anyone that you were targeting. KD, Kawhi, I go farther than those guys. I take you to 2 championships. I take you to 2 Eastern Conference championships. I win them. We go to 2 finals. I want to be compensated well. But on the other side, you see Pat Riley, and this is not like new for Pat Riley. He's done this he did it to Shaq. He did it to Dwayne Wade, the best player in franchise history. He let him go to Chicago. So Pat Riley's like, no, I'm not paying you for what you did. I'm paying you for what you can do, and what you can't do what you did. Yeah. So I see that aspect, but now it's just a situation that's just really gotten out of hand, and it's an unfortunate end to a very underrated run for a player of this caliber. Like, we haven't seen a player of this caliber lead a team to 2 finals like this, like we've seen with Butler, because he's not considered like a top 5, top 10 player. We haven't seen something like that. It's pretty unique that he was able to take this and the runs he had in those, an 8 seed and beating the teams he beat in that run. That was impressive.
But what I will say is Jimmy Butler's not a top 5, top 10 guy in the league. I'll agree. But when all of a sudden the calendar flips to April, May, June, he might be. And unless, again, I'm not going to hop on the Cleveland argument too much longer, but unless Cleveland is, the 2004 Detroit Pistons, they need a guy who's seen as a top 10 guy. Every NBA champion, except probably that 2004 Pistons team, was led by a future Hall of Famer or top 75 all-time player. So unless you think Donovan Mitchell is that good, which he might be, I'm not disputing that. They're the 2004 Pistons if they find a way to get it done. But Jimmy, I feel like elevates that a little bit because Jimmy traditionally has been, a top 8 to 10 player in the world when it matters most on the biggest stages. I don't know if he's that guy anymore, but there's one way to find out if you're Cleveland. And
that's the risk you have to really think about. Do we think we're going to get that? Because if you feel confident that Jimmy can be that person in a new environment where he's going to be appreciated, then you might have to take that risk, right? Because if you think that and you're like, all right, this might guys put us over the top, then look what he did with lesser teams, and we surrounded with Garland and Mobley and Allen and Donovan Mitchell. You might be like, that this is what gets us to the promised land, to Larry O'Brien trophy. So that's something I'm sure not just Cleveland and some other franchises are thinking about. But like I said, the Cleveland thing didn't think about. I'm going to ask people and see what they feel about that, because I didn't think Cleveland. But another guy who's kind of been very unappreciated at times, playing in Sacramento, that happens. We've seen that before. But De'Aaron Fox, it seems like that's another guy that might be getting shipped out. We heard some of the rumors today that, they're trying to get trade possibly before the deadline. And San Antonio is, from what we heard, maybe a top destination. Obviously, they have a Victor Wembanyama over there. So De'Aaron Fox, what's the percentage that you think he will get traded, and what's some teams you think he might be a good fit for?
So let me see. On my YouTube channel, again, shameless plug, 3 weeks ago, I posted a video basically saying these are the two most likely landing spots for De'Aaron Fox if, he will become available. Kind of foreseeing that this was a possibility. The two teams I talked about in that video were San Antonio and Houston. I do think it's going to be one of those two. San Antonio, obviously, it's been reported that they are his preferred destination. I'll put it this way. If Sacramento wants more of like a veteran package that'll keep them competitive on top of better draft picks, then San Antonio is the better package. If you want the younger assets and you're willing to, rebuild a little bit, then it's probably Houston. But at the same time, Houston has some very valuable picks as well. Houston could, if this comes to bidding war, offer a package that the Spurs are not going to be able to beat. I put together, actually today, 2 De'Aaron Fox trade packages. Let me know if you were in charge of the Sacramento Kings, which of these 2 deals are more appealing to you, Chris?
Okay, shoot.
The Houston deal. Fox goes to Houston. They get Steven Adams' expiring deal. They get Reed Shepherd, who we know is just the number 3 pick in the draft. They get Jabari Smith Jr., which I think Houston would be more than fine dealing because ever since he's been out, Amen Thompson's taken off, and they have Tari Eason still. So Reed Shepherd, Jabari Smith, and Cam Whitmore. They'd be willing to give all 3 of them. I think if you could keep Amen and Tari, they would give all 3 of them, plus the Adams expiring, plus Phoenix first in 25, 27, and 29.
So Phoenix is 25,
27, and 29 first-round picks.
So 3 firsts in that. Okay.
With Reed Shepherd, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, and then Steven Adams expiring. That I figure is like the Hail Mary, like, okay, Spurs, we're not messing around anymore. You're not topping this offer. They would still also have that Brooklyn 2027 swap, which they could really make a sweetener and throw to Sacramento, because figure the Nets just starting a rebuild. They're still going to You know that pick swap at 27 is going to be valuable.
Very much.
So that's an offer that came up with that. Like, okay, San Antonio, no team, unless OKC really decides to throw in everything. No team's beating that package that Houston just assembled.
That's what I'm saying. Houston has the assets to make the move without actually hurting their, what they have going on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and the money works in that?
It does.
Because of Adams' contract, right?
Well, Adams is 12.6. Then Reed and Jabari are about 10 each. So that already gets you to 34. And then Whitmore's 3. That's 37. Fox makes 34.
That's a great deal. If I get that, if I'm Sacramento, I'm like, yeah, pull the trigger.
If it's Sacramento, I do that yesterday. The Spurs package.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if San Antonio would want to give up Devin Vassell or Steph Castle. They would probably have to if they get a bidding war with Houston.
Right?
I have to.
Right.
The initial trade I came up with would be Keldon Johnson, Zach Collins, and Jeremy Sohan.
Okay, so Zach Collins, Sohan.
Let me see. I'm pulling up the pick equity that the Spurs have because the Spurs have better draft picks. I feel that if they just
Toronto pick this year, right?
They have Chicago top 10 protected.
Chicago.
So that could be literally pick 11, the best possible outcome for them. Or it's top 8 protected next year. So Chicago's going to keep playing this game with the teetering, with tanking, or the playing. That pick's going to convey either this year or next year, most likely. Or in the following, I think it's top 6. They have Atlanta unprotected in 25 and 27 and an Atlanta swap in 2026. They have, let me see what else they have. Those would probably be the most appealing ones. And they have all their own picks, which I'm sure they'd be fine with given the fact that they have Wemby. They have a 2030 if they really want to go far out. 2031, Sacramento owes them a swap for taking on the Harrison Barnes deal in the DeRozan signing trade. So they could give the Kings that swap back. Like, there's a way I think the Spurs could get it done. But again, I think even with Jeremy Sohan in there, they'd have to give up Steph Castle just because the ammo Houston could go into negotiations with.
So Zach Collins, Sohan, Castle.
And Keldon Johnson, maybe. Those 4 plus 4 first, and Sacramento gets a swap back or something. Maybe something like that. Again, I still think the Houston deal is better.
Houston, if they had to pick, if Sacramento had to pick, I think Houston still would be more appealing.
I agree.
But I mean, either or. I mean, because I'm a big Castle guy. I think Castle's going to be.
Castle was number 1 on my big board.
He was mine too.
Yeah,
He was mine on my big board too. So I have high praise for him, and I think he's going to be an all-star caliber player. So if you, but I either deal. I mean, I think the Houston one would for Sacramento. That would put them in a good position going forward, for their because they would be a rebuild. And then obviously Domantas Sabonis, I don't know if he's a candidate now, but maybe in the offseason, that's probably more likely where they'll try to maybe he's a part of something. I'm sure someone will want him. But yeah, those are 2 good offers. But yeah, you would take the Houston one, right? If you were Sacramento?
If I had the choice, I would take the Houston one if I'm Sacramento. But what I will say is these things have a way of working themselves out, especially with a power agent like Rich Paul, that they could say, look, Fox, Houston, you could trade for him. He will not re-sign with you. And that could scare Houston off from giving, a massive offer like this one that we're talking about now. So it's like, if he wants to really push himself to San Antonio, he could.
Yeah, because all you have to say is he's not re-signing with anywhere else but San Antonio. And then it's kind of it.
So does that deter you if you're Houston that much? Or Houston could theoretically give Fred VanVleet in a deal with 1 or 2 of those young guys if Sacramento, wants to stay competitive, I think the Fox and VanVleet backcourt would work fine. Fred VanVleet played next to Kyle Lowry and won a champion. Like, if Houston did that deal we talked about, well, they're giving up Whitmore, they're giving up Jabari Smith, and they're giving up Shepherd. That team is built very similar, the Rockets, to that Toronto Kawhi team that won it all.
Yeah.
They would have the two small guards in Fox and VanVleet, the way they had VanVleet and Lowry. Amen and Tari would basically be the Siakam and the Anunoby on that team. They don't really have a Kawhi. That's the only thing. Like, they don't have like a top 5 guy in the world. But like, then they have Şengün, who'd be the Marcus Gasol. Like, there's a lot of. It's not a perfect comparison, but there's a lot of resemblance to how that Toronto championship team was built. Except Amen Thompson's 20 years old. Tari Eason's 21. Like, this team is young enough that they could just continue to build and have enough assets that they could do what the Knicks did. Knicks made 2 moves. They did the Mikal Bridges deal, then they made the Cat deal. Houston would still have ammo to go get somebody else, potentially, whether it be this offseason or later next year.
Yeah. And then they could also just be like, hey, Sacramento kick rocks. We'll stay with our core, and then we'll figure out we'll get somebody in the offseason, because most likely there will be someone that is going to be disgruntled, wants out, and Houston's like, hey, look, we're in Houston, you know? We got all these picks. We got a lot of good young players. Hey, and we'll trade guys for you, and we'll still have Amen Thompson and all these guys to surround you with.
What I will say, though, if I'm Houston's GM, I'm very nervous that OKC and San Antonio are just going to be 2 Western Conference powerhouses during Wemby's prime, and OKC obviously might be the next. If I had to pick a team to be the next dynasty, it would be OKC. Houston is very well positioned, so I don't want Rockets fans to aggregate this and say, "Oh, that's Steven Bagell said." It's going to be Spurs and OKC. It's going to be a 3-headed monster in the West with those 2 teams. Even Memphis, I think, is in fine shape.
Yeah.
But same reason why Memphis would want to go after Jimmy Butler even as a rental. It's like, if OKC and San Antonio are going to keep getting better, like, if you're Houston, you just push your chips in and go for it. Boston's not going away. The Knicks aren't going away. Like, there's just so many good, and it's the alternative that, okay, if I'm Houston and I don't trade for De'Aaron Fox, I am scared shitless that San Antonio doesn't pair him with Wemby.
No, I'm with you. It might just be a situation where, like, hey, man, we got to do something, because, like you said, OKC is not going away. Nope. They got a nice young core. Wemby's on the rise, especially if they make a move to get, Fox or something. It might be a situation where we're like, all right, let's do this, because or else we don't want to be in that the 4th best team in the West, because then we'll be out in the second round every year, and then. And then guys are gonna be coming up for deals, as they're gonna have some guys coming up that they're gonna have to decide if they gotta pay, if they're gonna pay them long term. Jalen Green, Jabari's a restricted free agent, so some things to figure out. And
San Antonio, you're not really getting any prime draft picks anymore. Wemby is too good. The floor is too high for San Antonio now. For them to get a top 6 pick, unless they get some major lottery luck. With how deep the West is, even if they're playing team this year, whatever it is. But, how are you going to get the star alongside Wemby unless you trade for them?
100%.
No one's going to, even with cap space, who's going to sign his hand? I understand guys going to play with Wemby, but, what? Paul George is the biggest free agent to move in years. It's all by trade now, stars are moved.
And I was just going to say that, I think even cap space could be a little bit overrated. It's not like how it was in 10 years ago where we got to save up cap space for this free agent class. Those free agent classes aren't like they used to be, just 10 years ago. So you got to trade for your guy, you got to trade to get your guy now. So you got to accumulate draft picks, and get some young talent to be able to make the deal to get that. And, like I said, it's no longer that free agent, because there's not teams with cap space this upcoming season.
Brooklyn,
that's it. That's it. And there's
some teams will open up. There always are, but yeah, significant cap space is Brooklyn. Yeah,
Brooklyn. That's it. And there's no free agents that are going to be desirable like that.
Brandon Ingram, maybe. If I'm his agent, that's kind of the ploy I'm taking.
You go to Brooklyn, and if they give the money, but. No one that's like, all right, this is going to be our de facto number 1 guy type of free agent. We're going to clear up cap space to get him. No disrespect to Bi, he's a great player, but he's not that.
But there's a reason he's still on the Pelicans and not elsewhere at this point.
And I was just about to say that there's a reason why he's still there, and he's not a desirable, as we heard from multiple sources, he's not a desirable option right now. Yeah. Reason why he's still on the Pelicans.
The last thing I will say is I already lost my thought. I had something, then I was going with it.
Happens.
Oh, I got it. The De'Aaron Fox trade package, I'm telling you, like if that Houston offer, the one I just told you, happens, that is a generational type package. The De'Aaron Fox trade package, it's going to be an arms race. It is going to be such a big bidding war between Houston and San Antonio, in my opinion, just because of what the alternatives are. Like, you don't know who's going to be the next starter request out. Like,
there's going to be some names, yeah.
I mean, like, we don't know. We have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you have to go for it if you're Houston. You have to go for it if you're San Antonio. And it's one of those two teams are going to give the Godfather offer to overpay to get it done.
You got to overpay.
And we're gonna look at that trade package. The shame suite is going to come through, and people are going to say, holy crap, De'Aaron Fox went for that much? Because it's two asset-rich teams that are ready to push chips in, and like it's going to happen. Yeah,
and this is why you accumulate all them picks to try to make a splash like this. And it's good. It's going to be an interesting deadline to see where Jimmy goes, where De'Aaron Fox goes. It looks like they most likely will be gone. Just a matter of where and how that shakes up either the East or the West.
I would say the next starter request out, if I had to bet, would probably be Joel Embiid. And at this point, I know we're going to talk about the Sixers soon. The knees and the contract scare the hell out of me. And even so, like, San Antonio's not going to want Embiid because they have Wemby. And, like, Houston with Şengün, like, are you really going to blow? Like, that's not the move you make, Like,
yeah. So let's talk about it.
Maybe Giannis. Giannis would be, like, the dream for everyone.
So if they get bounced in, all right. So we'll go. Giannis is interesting. Okay. If another first round exit, healthy, they're both him and Dame Lillard are healthy, and they get bounced in the first round. Because right now, what are they? The fourth seed?
4 or 5, I think. I don't have things. I know, obviously, Boston, Cleveland, and Knicks are 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so they're currently the 4th seed, and I'm going to pull up
the fact that they're the 4th seed is miraculous, given how bad of a season they've
given the start. They like 2-8, something like that. So right now they would play Indiana in the first round.
Okay,
if Indiana beats them,
Indiana beat them last year, and Indiana swept them in the regular season last year.
If they beat them again in the first round, that's the worst thing that could happen to Milwaukee, because I don't know if it happens, but I think we'll start hearing more rumblings that Giannis is going to.
I 100% agree.
And that's why and you have to get all the intel for these teams. Maybe that you hear that and you're like, okay, Fox is cool, but maybe do we wait in case someone big like that? A true, not saying De'Aaron Fox is not a game changer. He's a tremendous player, one of the best guards in the NBA. But Giannis is literally, you could say he's the best player in basketball. Yep. Do you wait? That's the game you have to play in basketball right now. It's like, do we wait for maybe the big fish, like the megalodon, or do we get the marlin, and like De'Aaron Fox and be cool with that? But regret that. Oh, damn, Giannis was available and we could have had him.
Could you imagine what De'Aaron Fox goes? Well, let's say he goes to Houston, and then Giannis becomes available. OKC has if Giannis requests out, I just don't see a way to go to OKC. They're too asset rich. They have way too. They could offer legitimately 10 first-round picks plus young players plus whatever salary matching they need to get done, without, I think, giving up Chet or Jalen Williams or SGA. I think they would formally be able to have all 3 of those guys still with Giannis.
That would be interesting, man. That would be interesting. So we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of stuff that could possibly happen. You know, this basketball season can, I think it can change the way the next wave of what the NBA is going to look like this season. This could be a real true game changer, kind of like with KD in 16. I think it could be that type of game changing potential offseason. But let's talk about the 76ers. And we talked about Joel Embiid before. We said he could potentially be a name on the trade market, and it's been an interesting season for the 76ers, to say the least, right? It's off to they had a really bad start, play a little bit better, then struggled, and on a little bit of a streak now. Luckily, you're in the East, so you're always in it. You always have a chance to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but obviously getting Paul George was the big move this offseason from the Clippers. Jared McCain, you drafted him. He looked like he was going to be the rookie of the year. Unfortunately, out for the season. It's been a tough year. 17 and 27. Yep. Embiid has missed essentially the whole season. He's been out the whole year. Paul George has missed games. And when he's played, has not looked like the $200 million player that you invested in. He's also a player who's missed a lot of time and is getting older. Maxey has been, the bright spot, obviously. So, and McCain was a bright spot before the injury. So, what's your take on the season so far? And I just wanted a Philadelphia 76ers fan perspective on this season, because obviously I'm a Knicks fan, so I smirk that you guys are struggling a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. But as a basketball fan, it's just very intriguing just to see how this has not gone great. And just want to get a Philly fan's perspective of how they're feeling and what you think the direction is of this organization.
What did you say the record was? 17 and 27?
27.
So that's 44 games. If you told me, look, you guys are going to sign Paul George, but through 44 games, Joel Embiid's only going to play 13 of them. Mm-hmm. I would say, okay, then they'll probably, I would say probably 6 seed in the East, maybe 7. I wouldn't think 11. But without Joel Embiid, that guy is so impactful every time you look at the on-off numbers. That's why they always prioritize backup center for the Sixers, because the on-off splits are so drastic. I don't think that's totally because the backup center. Yes, the backup centers we have not been good. But Joel Embiid is just that impactful when he's on the court. He alone makes you a 50-win team if he plays, 65 games.
100%.
With him only playing 13 games, I would have told you we wouldn't have stood a chance. Now, obviously, when you sign Paul George, the hope is Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, Paul George. You have 2 of them playing every night. You figure it out. That just hasn't been the case. It's a shame because Embiid, they just signed to this massive, massive deal on top of what they paid Paul George. Embiid's extension, I don't know what went wrong, because these are knee issues that he's had that they've known about, but clearly team doctors signed off on him getting an extension. That there was no concerns about the knee. So that's where I don't fully understand what the issue became. You know what I'm saying? How did they give them the clearance to sign to an extension if you knew the knee was this bad, essentially?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And he's 30 too. He's 30 years old.
I know.
So we know centers, just naturally, it starts to dip after you get 30, because he's just a large human being in general. So then you add on top of all the injuries he's had throughout his career. Just remember, he missed the first 2.5 years of his career. Yep. with foot injuries and stuff. So but I'm just looking at his contract. I mean, it balloons to potentially $72 million in 29-30. $72 million.
Yep.
It's insane.
Let me see. When Embiid won MVP back in 2023, during that MVP year, I said he has 5 prime seasons left if we're lucky. But I said I think 5 is a safe number. That gets him to age 32. And even if we see a little bit of a drop-off, because even that MVP year, he went 2020, 2021, he was second in MVP voting. Then he got runner-up again to Jokic. Then he won. Then last year, he only played 39 games, but he probably, if he played, he could have went back-to-back.
He would have won MVP. I said that. Like, he was on pace to win the MVP.
So, but even at the least, he had 4 seasons where he was a top 2 MVP finisher. I said he has 5 years left that he already won MVP, which means he would have had this year and next year, and then maybe he would have declined and had one more good enough year that, maybe he would be the second fiddle to Tyrese Maxey. The Sixers are lucky they're as good at drafting as they are, because if we'd have Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain at picks 21 and 16, I don't even, they're godsends, Tyrese Maxey and Joel. Actually, as a Knicks fan, I don't know if you know this. Do you know the significance of why Sixers fans are such fans of Mike Muscala? Because this is a Sixers thing. I don't think outside of Philly, people know the significance of Mike Muscala to the Sixers org.
I think I've heard about it, but I can't think about it exactly.
So Mike Muscala did play half a season for the Sixers and ended up being traded to the Clippers in the Tobias Harris deal. That's completely irrelevant to why we are big Mike Muscala.
Didn't he get traded for Zubac too?
He did that same year. But Mike Muscala was on OKC. We had OKC's pick, but it was top 20 protected. The year they traded Russell Westbrook and they had that Chris Paul run as the 5 seed in the bubble.
Yeah, in the bubble. Yeah.
If they lost, it came down to game 82 or whatever was in the bubble. It was the last game of the year. OKC had everything locked up for the 5 seed. If they won this game, the Sixers got the pick 21. If they lost the game, OKC keeps the pick and it's pick number 20.
Okay, I remember something.
Mike Muscala hit a meaningless shot that allowed the Sixers to get pick 21, which became Tyrese Maxey. It was meaningless. They had everything locked up. The thought was OKC is going to intentionally lose this so they keep their pick. The game was meaningless. Mike Muscala hit a game winner that gave the Sixers the pick that became Tyrese Maxey at pick 21.
I remember hearing something about that.
So, yeah.
I just remembered
So not only did we luck into the pick in a sense, and I always told my fiance I will forgive Markelle Fultz if whatever we trade for him becomes an all-star of what he should have been. We traded Markelle Fultz for that pick that became Tyrese Maxey. So all is forgiven. Love Markelle Fultz. Hope, he's able to rehabilitate. Oh, my God. The Sixers just showed the starting 5 against the Lakers. I don't even want to talk about
it. Oh, but so what's your feeling? Do you think this core stays intact? Is this something? Do we see a new team next season, or do we have to wait and see if they can build some momentum and get into that top 6 and be and see how they do in the playoffs? Because listen, if they can get everyone healthy, I know McCain's probably going to be out, but if they can get Paul George to get back right and they can get Joel right, I mean, they have the talent to do something. So do we wait to the playoffs, or do you think, all right, nothing's going to happen? This team's going to get. We might see a whole different team next year.
I don't think we're going to see a whole different team. What I will say is they are, I think, $10 million over the luxury tax. So it wouldn't shock me if Daryl Morey basically sold off enough to get under the tax and just rolled with the team from there. Like Guerschon Yabusele, you don't have his bird rights. He's been phenomenal for us. Yeah, he's third in the team in total minutes behind Maxey and Kelly Oubre. So that shows a little bit of how big of a disaster season was that a guy who wasn't even in the NBA last year.
He wasn't even in the league.
And he's third on the team in minutes. But it shows he's been phenomenal.
He's been good.
If you could get a legitimate, decent first round pick, which I can't imagine you do because whoever trades for him won't have his bird rights. But if you get, 3 seconds for him and then offload either KJ Martin or Kelly Oubre to get under the tax and maybe get something like that, maybe that's as much as they do and then just run it back next year. I think Caleb Martin is on too valuable of a contract, $8 million a year for the next 4 years, if you include this year, to move off of him. Justin Edwards, as you know, had the draft pedigree coming out of high school. He's starting for us right now against the Lakers. So I think he's going to be signed off his 2-way to a standard deal.
Yeah.
They would love to get Yabusele back if they open up like a mid-level exception somehow next year. Like Andre Drummond probably opposite. So I think it's going to be a very similar roster next year because it's a shame. Like if going into the year, I was excited about the Sixers team, not just because I'm a fan. It was because, okay, they have a big three that actually makes sense if healthy with the dominant big man, athletic, speedy point guard coming into his prime, and a 3-and-D wing and Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
And the core they had around them with Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre and Andre Drummond. And if you told me Yabusele was going to be this good, like the pieces made sense.
Yeah.
But if you told me Joel Embiid's only going to play 13 games at this point in the year, yeah, I would have said there's no. And Paul George only plays 30. I would understand, okay, well, something went disastrously wrong. So I think they just they're going to tweak it again, maybe get under the tax. I think this is going to be pretty much the same team they have going into it next year. I think you got to commit to it.
I think I'm with you there. I think you run it back one more year at least.
This isn't the Al Horford situation. The Al Horford thing you had, if that after 1 year you knew you had to, change something up. This isn't that. This isn't
that wasn't working. But this could, I think you just got to run it back one more year. Yeah, I'm with you. I think you run it back one more year, and then after next season, I think you get a better feel if this is working or not. This year, obviously, the injuries and all that.
They're a playing team. I still think they make the play-in.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, luckily they're in the Eastern Conference because they're 17-37. I think you guys are only a game and a half out from Chicago. And we know how Chicago is. They can bottom out easily because they can have a deadline where Levine's no longer there and Vucevic's not there. So that can easily be you guys right there. So, and then once you get into play-in, I mean, those are winnable games, and you can easily. I mean, Miami might not be in it because Jimmy probably gone. So there's definitely a chance to even get to the top six and avoid the play-in. But we'll see. But a team that's on playing good hoop right now and just absolutely obliterating teams, by scoring 140 points a game, it feels like every night, is the New York Knicks. My New York Knicks. What's been your feeling from Cat's presence coming to New York? Obviously Mikal Bridges has been a lot better since that early start, and I knew that would be the case because obviously, getting acclimated to be kind of like the third or fourth option. That's tough. Being a corner three guy, that's tough to be from being like the number one option. That's a big gap you have to fill. And dropping down that from being a one option to a four. So the New York Knicks, they're 31-16 right now. They got two All-Star starters. Cat and Brunson made their first All-Star, being nominated to being All-Star starters for the first time. So how you feeling about the Knicks? I know you don't want to hear that. I can know you see my gloating and my happiness right now. But what's your thoughts on the Knicks right now? Because it's right now they're a game behind the 2 seed in the Boston Celtics, who have been kind of up and down these last feels like month and a half. They kind of not played the best of basketball, but and didn't they lose yesterday? Right? They lost yesterday to Houston. Yeah, they lost to Houston yesterday. So what's your feeling about the New York Knicks right now? Do you think they can have a chance to make a nice run?
Yeah, I like this New York Knicks squad. I like them after, they made the moves for Mikal Bridges and Cat. And honestly, I was a little concerned given, Tibbs is just going to run these guys into the ground, which obviously I feel like that's a concern for a lot of people just because, how many minutes all those guys play.
Yeah.
I'm looking at cleaning the glass. Knicks starting 5.
Best.
Lead the league in possessions in total as a lineup. Those 5 guys on the court together lead the league in possessions by how many? How many possessions do you think is number 2? I know it's a tough question. I'll say this. Knicks have 1,581 possessions of that starting 5 together. The second most in the league is Minnesota at 1,032. Minnesota starting 5. So Knicks have over 500 possessions more than any other lineup has played together this year.
Wow.
And I think continuity matters. I really think continuity matters.
Very much.
Third after that would be Houston starting 5 at 857. So the Knicks almost double their starting 5. There's only 4 lineups in the league that the Knicks don't double in terms of possessions their starting lineup has together, which is bonkers.
That's insane. I got to put that in my Knicks chat. I got to tell them that. That's an insane stat.
It's Minnesota, Houston, and Sacramento starting 5. Every other lineup in the NBA, the Knicks double or more in terms of possessions those guys play together.
That's insane. That's actually insane stat. And the fact that you said that the Rockets at 3, they're almost double the possessions from their starting lineup. Than
Rockets are 857 possessions together. Knicks are 1,581.
That's hey, and I said that before the season. I said teams are going to look at the Boston model and be like, you know what? Everything is about depth and all that. No, we need the best starting 5 to match with Boston.
But that's also a testament to how healthy they've been. That's me.
Yeah, and you have to be Boston. You're relatively lucky for the most part that a lot of their guys were healthy, and we know that. We know. Well, how many teams? I mean, you're going through right now with your team. Like, how many teams we know that have missed out on being champions because they just weren't healthy? Milwaukee's been through it recently. You know, they dealt with Giannis being hurt and being bounced in the first round. You know, so we've seen it endless times. And then right now the Knicks are, knock on wood, healthy.
Look at Boston's run last year. They played Miami with no Jimmy. Then they played Cleveland and Donovan Mitchell got hurt. Then the conference finals, they played Indiana and Halliburton got hurt. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes it comes down to health. And for the Knicks' sake, thank God, you know, that force has been on the side for that. Real quick, you know I had to come on and bring some Knicks trade targets to you.
Yes.
Because...
Which has been so hard for me, because even in our mock thing, I'm like, who do I try to guard? Who do I try to get? It's been so difficult.
There's only really 2 guys I feel like the Knicks could move for, you know, something of substance. And that has to be Mitch Robinson due to the salary of the $14.3 million. And it's probably Precious Achiuwa because, like, again, he makes $6 million. So, like, a guy in that range, the Knicks are $500,000 away from the second apron while they're hard capped. So, like, it needs to be a guy.
They don't want to be close to that salary. So I think a dump off, but like I can't see them moving Precious because he's valuable.
Yeah,
he's so valuable because he can, you know, he's very versatile. You know, he's not Mitchell Robinson, but he can on switches. You know, he's able to hold his own, and he's fat. He's mobile enough to be able to withstand on pick and rolls and stuff. So, but the Mitchell Robinson but it's like you look at that as like he'll be a valuable piece to this team. That's like getting a free agent, and we could use him off the bench and being, you know, a rim protecting, you know, shot blocking big, you know. But do you move that because let's be facing none of these teams want to be on the second apron.
Let me ask you. I have the list of trade targets for them. You want to go through them real quick?
Yes, shoot.
Okay. Would you trade Mitch Robinson for Bobby Portis, knowing Bobby Portis is at least going to be available and able to play?
He can shoot the 3 ball. Could use him off the bench because we don't have anything like that. Man. Bobby P.
Again, you may need to give up some seconds just because of availability of Portis compared to like that. But like that's like, it's close enough.
That's tough.
What about Robert Williams? Who obviously
I feel like Robert Williams is the same thing as Mitch. It's like availability.
But he's available right now.
He's available
we don't know.
right now.
Mitch, we don't know.
I think you just have to got to get more intel on Mitch because it's been a very weird situation because there was multiple saying, hey, he might be ready by November. He might be ready by December. The new year. It's going to be February in a few days, and he's still not, you know, apparently like close to being ready. So, and the red deadline is a few days. So, like, I don't know. And I know people who cover the team, and I'm like, what's going on? And I don't know They don't know what's going on with Mitch. It's just a weird situation. So, well, like you said, Robert Williams is playing right now, and obviously Portland has 3 bigs, and they don't need all them bigs. So,
I have another pool then offer. The Knicks, if you ask me what they need, is they just need some wing off the bench.
They need
obviously they had Deuce, and obviously if Mitch plays out the backup big, and even if not, like Jericho's been fine, Precious has been fine, but like I know they just basically stagger OG and Bridges most of the time, but like sure, every team could use an extra wing.
Exactly. We have 0 off the bench. 0.
What if they get Matisse Thybulle and Duop Reith as the backup big? Reith was phenomenal last year. He hasn't played much this year because Portland's has so many bigs. But you get Thybulle and Reith for Mitch Robinson. Is that something that would appease you?
That's interesting. Because just get bodies at this point. Because we're going to have to be going through, if you want to beat Boston, you got to throw bodies at them.
Yeah.
With their wings. So that's interesting. I wouldn't be. But then Portland has 4 centers now.
Portland's tanking. Like it's just a bad salary, and I'm sure they could flip
some one of the guys. They'll flip one of their guys. But if I'm not. Yeah.
The last guy I have for a Mitch Robinson deal, which doesn't make that much sense, would be Jordan Clarkson, just because you already have Deuce and you already have Campaign. Like you already have so many guards off the bench. But Jordan Clarkson's still a little bit bigger than those guys, a little more wingy than those guys off the bench. Like, would you flip Mitch Robinson for Jordan Clarkson?
Mitch for Jordan Clarkson. Man, another scorer. I'm just trying to see how he fits because I know Tibbs loves playing his starters 5.
That's why, like, these would be depth moves. Like, that's why it's like, I don't know. Like, how much would Matisse Thybulle realistically play on the Knicks when you already have Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby? Like, it's like, you don't need the perimeter defense,
And Clarkson, maybe I think Clarkson may be more suitable in moderation.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if he's really a guy that you want to play the amount of minutes he played in Utah, to be honest. So maybe if you get him in a more of in that 20-minute range, maybe you get a better, more efficient Jordan Clarkson, and maybe that's a better player for you. That will help you than whatever he's playing. I'm sure he's playing good minutes in Utah, but they suck. So it's like, no, it's in Clarkson. I mean, he's playing. Clarkson, like you said, availability right now is important, and we don't know where Mitch is. But that's the thing is we don't know. Are they going to trade for a guy who's hurt and might be out for the season? Like I said, we don't know. I don't know. Mitch might be done for the season for all we know.
Yeah. Which is why I think you need to consider basically all these trades that I came up with, because like you don't know. Like again, health is on your side, and if you could get an extra body or 2, I think it's something you consider. I also have 4 guys for a potential Precious Achiuwa deal, which I know we said Precious have been good, but just in terms of matching salary, Malik Beasley would be incredible for the Knicks. I don't know if Detroit even wants to move him at this point.
He's shooting like a crazy clip right now. It's like his shooting splits are unreal. But I don't know if Detroit, with the way they're playing, that they would load him, for Precious right now, because they have a bunch of they got some some front court guys.
Yeah, there had to be multiple seconds. It's basically the last few deadlines we've seen 3 or 4 seconds is the new first round pick. Essentially,
it's the new first. Yeah. That's what you're seeing because people value second round picks just as much as they ever have done before.
What about Simone Fontecchio, who I think Detroit would move? He would be phenomenal playing like 17, 18 minutes a game off the Knicks bench.
Fontecchio.
Like 6'8" forward, shoots the 3. I think he would add, a different element. Then again, this bench doesn't have like any wings or real forwards. But then like you're sacrificing Precious. So it's either Mitch is coming back and flip Precious for Fontecchio, or you're putting a lot on Jericho Sims.
I think the only way you trade Precious is if Mitch is coming back healthy. But if he's not, I think Achiuwa is just too valuable right now as essentially the backup big.
I get
and
it.
I think you need him unless you know you're going to get another big somehow. But the big market is expensive. It's going to be expensive too. So, and we just saw what did Nick Richards go to?
Phoenix.
He went to Phoenix. So that was a target they had, but he's in Phoenix now. So that's one less big. And there's not a lot of valuable bigs like that are left. Nick Richards was one of them, and they weren't in on him. So I think Precious is valuable right now. Very valuable. And thank God they brought him back when they did, because once Mitch was hurt, like we needed him. So that was massive.
So I have two more guys for a precious deal. Then I have one more target that is basically a minimum. Haywood Highsmith, I think, would be phenomenal if Miami, teeters more towards blowing it up. But again, Precious, you'd have to. This is assuming there's a contingency plan for backup center. Haywood Highsmith or John Conchar on Memphis.
Conchar on Memphis.
I would prefer Haywood Highsmith out of the two, but I think both them could be pretty good fits.
For Precious, right?
Yes. I mean, the salary would work for Precious.
The salary,
because Haywood Highsmith's, I think, at 5.2, and Contra's, I think, is 6.1 or something like that. Precious is at 6.
Yeah, and Contras hasn't been playing much, all right? He hasn't been
Memphis
playing.
has so much depth. And honestly, they could probably use another big with like Edie being out and Brandon Clark coming off the torn Achilles. So that's I think a realistic one. But again, you need a contingency plan backup big. So may I offer you a Gershon Yabusele, who the Sixers may have to deal because they don't have his bird rights, and he's on a minimum.
Yabusele would fit in perfect in New York.
He could play alongside Cat. He could back up. That's what he's been doing with Embiid the few games they played together. He's either playing alongside Drummond or Embiid, or he's the backup or starting center. He plays the 4 or the 5, a little switchable. I wish the Knicks had a first-round pick to trade us for Yabusele because I think it makes too much sense for both teams.
Yeah, we gave a bunch of those in the Mikal deal.
And then the remaining one was to the T-Wolves for Cat. I still think you have that, Washington one that's most likely going to never convey.
It's super, it can get conveyed down like it's protected heavily. We'll never see the light of that pick. But yeah, man, exciting times in New York right now. We're playing, playing good ball right now, and it's our starting 5 is really good. And I think eventually we're going to see some of the young guys get more run. I know that's been a big thing, is where we're going to get that depth, and we might just have it. We're just letting it grow. We're just waiting to let it blossom. And I think it's coming. I think Kolek is someone we're going to see more down the line, because even yesterday, if you just see some of the flashes he has, the passing, like that pass he had the Deuce I was more impressed by the pass than the dunk.
Yeah,
I'm a big Kolek guy. I thought he was a top 20 guy. He had top 20 on my board. This guy was a phenomenal at Marquette. Best. He was the leading assist guy in the country last year.
Yep.
Watching, like, he was phenomenal at Marquette. And doing it against top tier talent too. It wasn't just he was doing it against top tier guys. So give respect to him. I think he's going to get more run. So I think you're going to see Pacome is going to eventually get more. He's super young, but I think we'll see him get more down the line. So I think eventually the young guys in the Knicks will help, and then we'll see. And then hopefully we get Mitchie back. If Mitch comes back, I think that's like getting a free agent, man. It's like getting a free agent. So, and he'll probably come off the bench. He's done it before, and that's massive. To get a guy of a starting center coming off the bench like that, that's huge. And I'm liking where they're going right now. It feels good. Defense can get a little, we got to tighten up a little bit on defensively, especially on the perimeter. There's sometimes we'll have those games where we play Chicago and Chicago just goes off on us, and it's just those weird games that happen, but we're all overall excited. I think if you're a fan of the Knicks, you're feeling good right now, because it could be, no offense, Steve, we could be you guys, You
guys were us for a long time.
Exactly. We've been there. We don't want to get back. We don't want to be back there.
I will say this New York front office not only has done a phenomenal job with the little moves around the edges, like the way they were able to construct Mikal Bridges and still been able to acquire Karl-Anthony Towns after that, like those little nuances, but also like the foresight they had, like signing Jalen Brunson to the deal they signed him to when he was a backup point guard. Signing Deuce McBride for $4.5 million a year when he was not good when they signed him to that. And Deuce McBride is one of the best contracts in the NBA now. Like,
because right now on the market, if he were to be a free agent right now and go on the market, he's getting $10 million a year.
Getting more than $10 million, I'd say.
Man, probably more than that.
Yep.
And they got him for 3.5 per or whatever it was, something like that. So
yeah, they've done a phenomenal job, that Knicks front office. You have to give credit where it's due.
Exactly, and I'm not used to it. We're not used to Knicks fans. We're not used to competent front office, and they're making moves to help us get to where we ultimately want to be, and that's to be in the NBA Finals. Yep. And to find the Jalen Brunson, I mean that started off, and obviously, you know, I know a lot of people don't like Julius Randle, but you got to give him credit where credit's due because he helped. You know, when it was all bad, he came here and he became a 2-time All-NBA player here. So, you know, those pieces help build to what we're at now. And now we're going to just keep going and hopefully, you know, maybe add a piece, you know, at the deadline and then, you know, get the youngins, you know, up to date and get them more run. And hopefully Mitch Robinson comes back and then we'll see what happens. But, you know, we got some tough teams ahead of us in Boston and Cleveland to battle with. And, you know, you still got to worry about the Milwaukees and stuff behind you. But overall, man, it's exciting times in New York. But Steve, my man, it was a pleasure having you on the pod, brother.
Yeah, pleasure is all mine. Obviously, we talk ball all the time, whether it's college, NBA. So I couldn't pass up the opportunity, you know, to especially trade deadline. You know, like that's when I'm feasting is a trade deadline, like that in the off season with like the salary cap and trade technicalities and CBA. Oh my God, the Lakers just put Bronny James in. Okay. With that said, they just put him in.
we timed it perfect, you know. But before we sign off, Steve, plug what projects you got going on. Tell the people where they can find you on social media.
Wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, go listen to the Bird Rights podcast. Go listen to One and Done College Basketball podcast. Go read my work at the Center Hub. It's the-center-hub.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at _NBAGEL. That's NBAGELL. Again, go follow the mock trade deadline. We have the hashtag TCH mock trade deadline 2025. It's long, but every trade that we've made, you could see there. I have fallen a little bit behind on posting them, but they'll all be posted by the time the actual trade deadline. We're trying to do a trade deadline live show during that whole day next Thursday. So that's something that I will be promoting, assuming we coordinate that. But otherwise, Chris, I appreciate you taking the time to have me on. Yeah,
man, you do a good job with that trade deadline stuff that we have. I mean, it's fun.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Fun. You know, just the way it has it's a nice little setup you do. So good job, and you do great work overall with everything you do. You know, with the cap stuff and covering, you know, college basketball the way you do, and just being so locked into it. So that's why I respect everything you do and continue success with everything you do, brother. I'm always rooting for you. So make sure to follow me on all socials. I'll post that all in the descriptions on the podcast and on the YouTube. And on that note, make sure to follow me at Off the Ball Pod on all social media platforms, on Instagram, X, Facebook. Make sure to follow, subscribe on Google Podcast, whatever podcast platform, you know, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and make sure to subscribe to the Off the Ball Network YouTube page as we get closer to 600 subscribers. So pod will be dropping soon. Appreciate everyone who supports the Off the Ball podcast. Make sure to check out the Get a Bucket podcast. We'll hopefully get Steve on there and talk some college basketball soon. We'll get him on that one with me and my co-host Kev, Luke. So on that note, guys, thank you for listening. Enjoy, be safe, take care. Peace out.